everyone, this is Dawn. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm glad you're here. Welcome to another Makers with Heart mystery envelope. This month, I sent mystery envelopes to all the Makers with Heart. So let's see what we got. I sent out papers from the Mix-In collection and some sparkles and some more papers from Mix-Ins, a zip strip and glacier cardstock and some of the In Full Bloom pattern papers. So my rules were pretty flexible. You may use white daisy and black cardstock and up to 2 sheets of additional patterned paper or cardstock. Any stamp sets, thin cuts, inks and oxides, and stencils, any mixed media. And in addition to the sparkles, you can add 1 additional type of embellishment, and then Cricut cuts are okay as well. Okay, so I'm going to use the stamps from In Full Bloom Scrapbooking. And my sentiment is going to be from For All Occasions, and then I'm going to use the Perfectly Imperfect patterns and the Spring Blossom embossing folder. Okay, so let's get started. I'm gonna begin by cutting my base in black cardstock at 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And this is the size of an A2 card. And then I'm going to use that piece of glacier cardstock. I'm going to use the light side, and I'm going to cut that down. It's already at 4 inches. And then I'm going to cut it down to 5 1/4 inches. And then I'm going to put it back in my trimmer at an angle and just kind of angle off the bottom. I'm not really measuring, I'm just kind of eyeballing it and trimming that off. Okay, so now I'm going to bring in my embossing machine, and I'm going to place this piece of glacier in that embossing folder and run it through. And then get the die cut machine out of the way, and I can do some stamping. Okay, so I've got several of these floral images, and I'm going to stamp a whole bunch of them out on white daisy cardstock in intense black ink. I'm not going to use them all, but I like to have a lot to choose from when I'm building my card, and then I can always use the leftovers for another card. So I'm just going to stamp a whole bunch of these flowers out. And then off camera, I'm going to die cut them and color them in with tri-blend markers. All right, and then on this piece of In Full Bloom pattern paper, I'm going to stamp these leaves, and I'm going to cut them out with the coordinating die cut as well. Okay, so we'll skip ahead. Everything's colored in and cut out, and we're ready to start building our card. So this piece of patterned paper from the Mix-In collection, I'm going to stamp my sentiment in the white space in the upper left corner. And I need another Mother's Day card, so I'm going to do Happy Mother's Day, but that For All Occasions stamp set, it's got a million different occasions to stamp your sentiment from, so you can certainly choose another sentiment. And then I'm just gonna put this in my trimmer and trim around my stamped sentiment. And deciding which parts of that pattern paper to leave. And then I'm gonna put this other piece of Mix-In paper in my trimmer, and I'm gonna trim off, it's about 1/4 of an inch. And I'm going to use that to accent my sentiment strip. Okay, so now I've got my card base, and we can start building our card here. So I'm going to put down the black, and then I'll add the glacier, and I'm going to use a lot of tape runner here, just because with that embossed surface. Not all of it's going to be touching the card, so I want a lot of adhesive there. And then I'm just going to kind of lay out my flowers along the diagonal line here and just get an idea of where I want to place everything. And then ultimately I decided to not use that large yellow flower, and I just clustered all the leaves and smaller flowers along the diagonal here. I'm just kind of laying everything out to get an idea. And then my sentiment was a banner, but then I decided to trim that off as well. Okay, so now I have everything adhered to my card front. I've used tape runner and foam tape, and then I'm going to use my sparkles to place in the centers of all of these flowers. Okay, there's my finished card. I have some close-up shots here. I think it turned out pretty. Okay, let's make another card. So this is what I have left of the things that came in the envelope. I'm going to use pattern number 20 from Make It From Your Heart Volume 4. Okay, so I've cut out several images from the In Full Bloom SVG collection on my Cricut. And I'm going to cut down some of these papers to create the pattern. I'm going to use my zip strip and then the rest of this patterned paper from the Mixin collection. So I'm just following the pattern from Make It From Your Heart. And so the two pieces of additional pattern paper or cardstock that I chose one piece of avocado and one piece of glacier, and I used those to cut my images from the Cricut. Okay, so I have my card base here, and I'm going to use some glacier ink and a blending brush, and I'm just kind of making a wash of ink at the top of the card and then at the bottom of the card, just to add some additional interest to my card front. And then I'm going to sponge some more glacier ink around the edges with a sponge dauber to create a border. And then, wanted it a little darker. And then I'm going to bring in some Lagoon ink and some of these stamps from Perfectly Imperfect. And I'm going to create some splatters of ink with the stamp looks like ink splatters. And so I'm going to use that in Lagoon. And then one of the Cricut cuts is this little banner. And I'm going to stamp my sentiment that says, "Thank you." Okay. And then I'm going to bring in a journaling pen, and I'm going to doodle a little border around this sentiment. Just kind of draw around the edges there. Okay. Now we're going to kind of put my card together according to the pattern. Just going to lay everything out on my card front here. And then off camera, I'm going to assemble all of these images that I cut out from my Cricut. Okay, so now they're all assembled and I can just start adhering everything to my card front. So I'll just lay everything down and I'll skip ahead in a second. All those placed down, and then My floral images and my sentiments are going to be a combination of tape runner and foam tape. So we'll get that sentiment down and then all the different floral images. Okay. And then for a last touch, I'm going to bring in my clear shimmer brush and I'm going to paint some shimmer on each of those flowers. So give it some shimmer and shine. I'll have some close-up shots in a second. Okay. Look at that shine on those flowers. So pretty. Very delicate cuts from the Cricut. Okay, let's make another card. So I'm going to use pattern number 16 from Make From Your Heart Volume 4. And then I'm going to use these stitched squares. And I've cut out more of these images from the In Full Bloom SVG collection in White Daisy. And I've stacked 3 of them. Okay, so I'm going to cut this stitch square out, the frame out of this piece of In Full Bloom pattern paper. And then I've cut out the square and then also the frame. So I'm going to stack my pattern paper on top of 2 layers of black pattern paper just to give it a little more dimension. So we'll glue that top layer on. You certainly don't have to do this, but it gives it a little more dimension and substance. And then I'm going to cut my pattern paper according to the pattern. So I'm just looking at the design on the paper and strategically cutting. Get that large piece down. And then I'm going to bring in this piece of mix-in, and it's not 5.5 inches. So this is kind of a cheat. I've cut a 1/2 inch, and then I'm just going to cut this in half. And it's going to get layered under that stitch square. So you'll never know that it doesn't go the whole way across. I'm going to stamp my sentiment that says just because, and it's on this little banner that was cut from the Cricut. And I'm going to doodle a line around the edges as well. Okay, so I'm going to take these White Daisy leaves. I'm just trimming off the end of the large one so it'll fit in my stitch square. And I'm just going to cluster them on that square. So I'm just going to layer them and lay them down in that space. And then on top of this cluster, I will put my sentiment. Okay. All right, let's assemble a card. So I'm going to put down that piece of pattern paper first. And it goes 1 inch from the bottom. So I'm just using the measurements on my Versamat to figure out where to place it. And then these 2 pieces of mix-in paper that weren't long enough, I'm just going to adhere them as if they are 1 strip on the left and right side of the card. And then my stitch square is going to go over it. So again, I'm using the measurements and just kind of eyeballing it, get it centered there. And then I'll place that panel that I have my leaves. I'm using a lot of adhesive because it's pretty thick. I'll get that in the center there. And then I'll add my sentiment. Just kind of offset it there. And for the last touch, I'm going to add some more of these sparkles. in both the regular size and the bitty size. So I'm just going to scatter a whole bunch of them around in that, on the black cardstock, just for a little extra bling and interest. So all of these supplies are currently available in my online store. I'll make a list with links in the description below. And for the last touch, I'm going to sponge some Lagoon ink around the edges. Okay, we'll have some close-up shots. There's the finished card, and here are all of my cards. So I appreciate you watching my video today. If you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button. I would really appreciate it, and then you'll be able to find all of my videos. And don't forget to click on the playlist to see what all of the cool things the other Makers with Heart have done with this collection of supplies. And thanks for watching.